smaller members of my family who, quite reasonably, expected the hours after school and work to be family time. Consequently, these are not hours that I often take for focused work, let alone for exercise or other such pursuits. And so, I have begun to see the benefits of getting a jump on the day. We all have 168 hours a week, but not all hours are equally suited to all things. I certainly noticed this when I started tracking my time for my book on time management, 168 Hours. As I kept time logs, writing down what I was doing as often as I remembered, I noticed patterns. Namely, during normal business hours, I would have one really good burst of productivity in the morning when I could focus for 90 minutes or more on a single project. Later in the day, I became more easily distracted. Not only was I tempted to click over to email or surf the web, but things started piling up that I had to answer. I saw this on the time logs other people kept for me as well. As the day went on, the time spent on each individual task began to shrink. As for exercise, I saw a few folks who managed to exercise after work, but these tended to be young single sorts. Those of us who work at home could squeeze in a workout during the day, since the lack of cubicle mates meant it didn't matter if we didn't shower afterward, or ever. But the sweat factor was a major deterrent to people with conventional jobs, as was the desire not to be seen walking out with a gym bag in the middle of the day, and the shockingly regular nature of work emergencies. Work hours had a way of stretching into evenings as deadlines loomed, and that planned workout never happened. People who were serious about exercise did it in the mornings. At that point, emergencies had yet to form, and they would only have to shower once. As Gordo Byrne, a triathlon coach, once told me, there's always a reason to skip a 4 o'clock workout, and it's going to be a good reason, too. Logistically, it makes sense that mornings are a good time for exercise or focused work. But as I made a few tune-ups based on my time logs and started pushing phone calls to the afternoon in order to take advantage of my morning productivity burst, I wondered if there were reasons beyond logistics that mornings seem to be made for getting things done. It turns out that there are. New research into that old-fashioned concept of willpower is showing that tasks that require self-discipline are simply easier to do while the day is young. Roy F. Baumeister, a professor of psychology at Florida State University, has spent his career studying this topic of self-discipline. In one famous experiment, he asked students to fast before coming into the lab. Then they were put in a room, alone, with radishes, chocolate chip cookies, and candy. As Baumeister and science journalist John Tierney write in their 2011 book, Willpower, Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength, some students could eat what they wanted, and some were assigned to eat only the radishes. Afterward, the participants had to work on unsolvable geometry puzzles. The students who'd been allowed to eat chocolate chip cookies and candy typically worked on the puzzles for about 20 minutes, as did a control group of students who were also hungry but hadn't been offered food of any kind. The sorely tempted radish eaters, though, gave up in just 8 minutes. A huge difference by the standards of laboratory experiments. They'd successfully resisted the temptation of the cookies and the chocolates, but the effort left them with less energy to tackle the puzzles. What Baumeister and his colleagues took from this experiment is that willpower, like a muscle, becomes fatigued from overuse. This is a problem because, while we think of our lives in categories like work and home, the reality is that, as Baumeister told me, you have one energy resource that is used for all kinds of acts of self-control. That includes not just resisting food temptations, but also controlling your thought processes, controlling your emotions, all forms of impulse control, and trying to perform well at your job or other tasks. Even more surprisingly, it is used for decision-making.